Serious, people who have been guests on reality shows such as remodeling, weight loss, porn shows, what really went on? I worked on one of the final Extreme Home Makeover episodes. The 7 in 7 episode where we built 7 houses in 7 days in Joplin, MO after a huge tornado wiped out a lot of the city. The construction crews were all run by local general contractors and their teams donating their own time, which was really awesome. None of the hosts did any of the real work. They just did a few things for cameras. Ty Pennington was a huge douchebag and diva. He only came out of his lavish tour bus for a few minutes at a time to shoot his scenes. The week of the shoot he went and got belligerent drunk at a bar in town and made an ass of himself. Oh yeah. And the house I was working on was framed with 8D nails. I wasn't part of the framing crew. Inspector never said anything. I was on Judge Judy back in 2010. Our case was real and handpicked by the production team. We had to pull the case from real court in order to go on her show. The decision of who wins and loses is made up before you even walk into the courtroom set. The audience is all actors paid to sit there. Judge was wearing jeans and slippers under her robe. Also, she's incredibly quiet in real life. As in, I had to really strain to hear her. All in all, I got a paid 3-day vacation to LA and stayed in a decent hotel. I also got paid to be on the show, and when I lost they show paid the other guy for me. Pretty amazing. Really. I was on Homes in the second season. We had our weird cement bullshit floor replaced with granite. The crew were very nice and almost everything was authentic with 2 exceptions. Work took about 2.5 weeks and they presented it as being a 2-day job. And Holmes didn't do much work on our place, not for lack of ability but simply because he was busy as hell. His crew were great and he chipped in and led where he could. We paid for materials but the labor was free. He usually mentions on the show that he isn't around much and that his crew is doing all the work. Doesn't he? I enjoy watching this show. Though I have to say I wouldn't really care all that much if it was scripted. The interesting part for me is how different construction is compared to the way it's done in Germany. My family won a kitchen makeover from the Martha Stewart show. They said they sent us on vacation for the last week of construction, but in reality we stayed home and ate in our basement the whole time. They filmed us driving up the street, had us change our shirts and then filmed us getting back from the airport. Can't complain though. The kitchen was nice. Edit, just to be clear. We were never promised a vacation. We were aware it was just something they were telling the audience because it sounded much nicer than we made them eat in their basement. It actually wasn't bad eating in our basement for a while, but I can understand how that sounds bad. I was on What Not to Wear, AMA. I will say the hours were really long and they don't make you throw everything away. Also Clinton Kelly was one of the nicest people I have ever met. Went above and beyond to help me get clothes that worked. Even staying on off camera at the 15th hour of a day to get the right pants. Stacy was nice too. The weirdest things were the up close reshoots. If you pointed at anything while being filmed, they'd come in afterward and do an up close of your hand doing the motion. We learned towards the end to just stop pointing. Throwaway and probably too late for anybody to see this. I was a contestant on Survivor, Pearl Islands. For the most part nothing is really scripted. Although obviously it's cut way out of order for dramatic effect, I learned you can always tell by the pimples that appear and disappear on contestants from scene to scene. Some people are surprised that we were provided toilet paper and tampons plus a spotter sheet and throw away the paper. Which was good because most people had to get up to blast a diarrhea dump at least 3 times a day from eating rice cooked in stagnant filth water. No matter how much they boiled that water, it still tasted earthy and had grains of dirt in it. I went on a show called The Year of Making Love, where we filled in an exam to scientifically match us up with our ideal partner. It studied our likes, dislikes and what we looked for in a partner. We all had to drive up to Birmingham or someplace. And there was 1,000 people. 500 women. 500 men. Split into genders. We sat on each side of a hall. When numbers would be called up and a man and woman would walk onto a stage, Meet and walk off down the aisle. My one didn't show up. My high school was on a couple of episodes of MTV Made. The girl wanted to become more popular and the prom queen. MTV put on a shitload of different events in her name to encourage us to vote for her. What MTV didn't show was that the reason she was unpopular wasn't because she was overweight or in the band or anything. Though both were true. She was unpopular because she was a giant itch, like insanely rude and itchy. Needless to say, she did not win prom queen. To their credit, the show didn't try to reshoot it to make it look like she won or anything. My school had a girl on Made as well who wanted to be in a band. She was really unpopular. And I mean really unpopular. And they couldn't find anyone worthwhile who really wanted to be in a band with her, so it ended up being a bunch of nerds. They asked people what they thought about the girl beforehand, and I remember one girl told them that their star smelled like rotten snatch. They didn't use that. In the end she won the talent show in a category that was made up for bands. Which hers was the only one. She got kind of a big head after the show and people still liked her just as little as they had before, and she ended up dropping out or transferring schools due to people's reaction. I was on American Ninja Warrior. All in all, it's legit. The crowd reactions are often from different runs times. The crowd noise may be doctored here and there. The order of the runs may be changed. And the commentary may be redubbed. But that's all minor TV stuff that's expected. Everyone that worked on the show was incredibly nice. It's clearly a TV show more than a pure athletic competition. But that doesn't detract from it in any way. In my opinion, 10/10 would keep watching. I got to participate in a very limited way in Extreme Makeover Home Edition. The one thing that I learned was how little actual useful work the stars do in terms of the building. Is this a surprise to anyone? Look how ridiculous they are all dressed. That one chick toting around a pink hammer, holding it with 3 fingers. It reminds me of Zoolander when he works in the mine. Except these hosts wouldn't even pretend that they did that much work. How do people not completely see through this? Did the home makeover show when it was in Philly. The neighbors make out great. Some of the neighbors were sent away on trips too, so we could take over their yards for storage and setting up a cabinet shop. They also received free furniture. And the surrounding neighborhood can go to the hospitality area and eat some free food. But as others have stated, the construction is horrible. They used leaf blowers and hair dryers to get the joint compound to dry faster. After the show aired, the bed that could lower into the floor was permanent disabled because someone could get crushed under it. House was robbed a week after the show aired and the family ended up moving 5 years later, which I heard is the amount of time you agree to not sell the house as a condition of being on the show. Late to the party. And I've posted this before. But here goes. I used to work with Glass Sword Guy, who was on Pawn Stars season 1. For those who can't watch the clip, according to the show, Glass Sword Guy supposedly spent several years crafting a sword made of glass that he was then trying to sell to Pawn Stars. Pawn Stars basically ripped apart the idea of making a glass sword, calling it a piece of crap. In actual reality, Glass Sword Guy's wife owned a stained glass shop in Vegas at the time. The Pawn Stars producers went to her store and commissioned the creation of this glass sword. When it was done, they asked Glass Sword Guy to be on the show pretending he was trying to sell it. I realize I'm late to the party, but my family's house was featured on a season of this old house. The biggest thing in terms of what really went on is that we very cautious, and rightly so, about the promise of any free stuff. Unlike some other shows, on this old house we paid the full price for them to do the construction basically on a contractor basis. But the show does have certain materials that get donated as part of advertising sponsorship relationships. Now, when that stuff is donated, it's free for the show. But it gets taxed as a gift to the people receiving it. That is, us. So my parents were very cautious in terms of working with an accountant, and particularly at the design stage, to make sure that what the architect was proposing wouldn't bankrupt us. Some of the previous old houses had had some horror stories that we'd heard rumors about on that front. The advantage from our perspective wasn't that it was any cheaper. It was that the contractor team was exceptionally good, and B, that everything would get done on time. And that was certainly worth it. As for the reality aspect, well, I don't think this old house tries to go in for the drama as much as the other reality shows. But they did feed my parents lines about the construction. My parents are not DIY people, so when they are talking about switches and wood grain and all this other stuff, that was fed to them. All in all, a great experience, and we're still in touch with some of them. Roger Cook, in particular, is awesome. I was signed by Discovery for a reality show that filmed, but last minute I got cut. There was 4 groups all over the US that were filmed. We all were owners of a business in a specific niche. Wildlife control. After filming with the MacLeod watching reality TV, I realized just how fake everything is. We were filming at night on our 2 small boats. We were attempting to move an iguana from a tree about 20 feet in the air. It jumped and dove into the water, just missing our net. Producer calls for one of the boats to come ashore and get a log he found. He proceeds to coach his PA on how to throw the log up in the air and into the net that was sitting at the water level. All he said to the cameraman was, "You what to do," or something along those lines. I have other stories like how they made me film with a dead animal and had me interact with it and move it as if it were alive. I am sure it will be disappointing and not at all surprising to hear that Antiques Roadshow is pretty much like it looks. Our dusty crap was not selected for a special segment, but we did have our items appraised. They filmed the segments right out in the middle of where everyone is lined up waiting, so you get to see it unfold. The one thing that they don't show is how much research the appraisers do. I mean, sometimes they'll say on TV, "I did some research," or "I consulted with colleagues," but I think most times a viewer might come away with the impression that the appraisers clap eyes on a piece and immediately understand its significance. But generally they have a laptop and some reference books to turn to, as well as memberships on the fine arts auction sites which show prices realized in previous sales. Also, I was a volunteer on a short-lived MacLeod show called School Pride, where they renovated public schools. I worked several days nights at the Detroit area school that they made over. I don't know if it was because the show was new or what, but it did not seem very organized, and a lot of the student volunteers on site didn't have enough to do because no one had a plan for them. I think they must have made a monster effort in the last few days. When the segment aired, they showed some very industrious looking work sessions, and those weren't going on at all when I was there. Nice people, though. I am not sure the producer on site ever got much sleep. I was on Made, an MTV show about turning nerds into pickup artists, charming people, whatever term suits your fancy. Well, technically, rather, I was at a party being hosted for the main star of the show. My family and I happened to be vacationing at the Atlantis Resort in Nassau, an island in the Bahamas, when we heard about MTV hosting this party. And 15-year-old me figured it would be fun to go. As I walked through the entrance to the party, I saw a pretty girl on a seat in the corner. I asked her what she was doing, and she said something along the lines of, "They asked me to wait here." From being at the party and later watching on TV, I learned that this was the girl that the star of the show got to go on a date with. In other words, MTV spoon-fed a date to a guy on a show about how to get a date. I can't blame the girl for agreeing to it. She got to be on TV, and all she had to do was go to a nice dinner by the dolphin enclosure with a fat nerd. Not the most exciting thing in the world, but confirmed to me that, yes, reality TV is as fixed as everyone believes. Might be late to the game here, but I was on Miami Inc. Actually, wife got to too, and I was the person there for support. I was on the show for a bit and got to meet most of the cast. Weird parts were how show was not exactly scripted, but they had a set plan on what they wanted to do and got people to fit the idea they had. We had to pay for all our expenses and pay for the tattoo. It was pretty expensive. Tattoo was over $800. I was told that was standard, unless special case. All the cast members I met, Gava, Darren Brass and Yoji Harada, were really cool guys. Ami was not on our episode but was there. He was a little standoffish and refused to sign the Miami Ink book I had brought and didn't want to take a pic with us. He just came off as really rude. Other guys being so cool made up for it. This was right after the season where they had a lot of fights with Kat, but Kat was not there. I asked them if fight on show with Kat were real and they kinda gave me some looks and said that most of the fighting was real. Kat and Amy apparently didn't get along in real life as well. All overall cool experience, but annoying we had to pay $42 and all expenses to be on a show that makes money. Episode was titled No Regrets. TV.com. I was on a Canadian show called Trading Places. My wife, our 2 kids, and I swapped lives with another family on the other side of Canada for a week. It was actually a pretty cool experience. The producers set up a number of activities with the idea of creating watchable TV, but in the end everything was pretty authentic. For one activity I was entered into a cyclocross race and the idea was that I was to only do 1 or 2 laps. Just enough to grab some footage. I actually kept going. Finished the race. And beat 2 of the other racers. The other family is absolutely awesome. After the show we met up and have actually stayed in touch ever since. They even came for a visit last summer. The show was back in 2002, so this was the early days of reality TV. I am sure it's a lot more scripted now. I was on the old MTV show Yo Mama. Jokers keep a piece of paper with the jokes on it in their pocket and they pull it out before each line and memorize the line. The background group had to rehearse several times for the applause and cheers. I was a cast alternate for Fox's Utopia. What that basically meant is that I had to be constantly ready to drop everything and join the show to replace a voted out cast member. Here's what I can tell you. The show was pitched to me as a survival show. They wanted to know all my skills and how I would handle dangerous situations. The show, in actuality, was all about getting good looking people naked in the man-made, fully stocked lake. The cast had electricity by day 3. I would receive phone calls asking me if I've been keeping up with the action and what my feelings were. Knowing full well that they wanted drama, I'd lash out at nearly everyone on the show. They asked me if I could design their e-commerce site better. Yes, this was a survival show, but the group had a ducking e-commerce site to make money. The best thing I got out of the ordeal was a paid vacation to Los Angeles for a week. Got to meet a bunch of whackers and pompous LA executives. Got to meet the guy who created the voice and all that shit. It's 100% as sleazy as you'd expect.